Hello, gente. There are those of you who've been waiting for me to make these last statements about Kamala and the Republicans and the Democrats. Well, here I am to make it more plain. I said, choose your poison. Choose your poison. What do I mean by that? Well, if we look at Trump, he's got this 2025 proposal. And let's kind of break that down. What he wants is to totally rid us of the Constitution, totally rewrite everything. Interesting. Maybe that's why they took down all the Confederate flags and all the Confederate head busts and all this stuff about slavery. Is that why they just have one museum or two or three, and let's take away the vestiges of enslavement? Maybe. I don't know. I find it odd that, and interesting at the same time, that you're tearing down, we have to tear down these indicators of slavery. Why? And then a couple of years later, we have a candidate who wants to rewrite everything, and even probably his one of his main contributors, Elon Musk, who I have a tremendous respect for him. Elon Musk gets up and says, this is your last election. If Trump gets in, you won't have to have any more elections. So, what does that mean? There was a book called The World is Flat. My dad told me to read it. It came out like at the end of the 90s, beginning of the 2000s. And what was so interesting about it was it talks about America and how in the future America's dichotomous. You've got the haves and the have-nots. That's it. And that's pretty much what we have. The middle class is gone. So does 2025 help to instill that middle class is gone? I say that because let's take a look at what's going on around us. I mean, how many lawsuits and class action suits are there? I mean, the minute they had a class action suit for women of color, black women who got perms and got cramps and got tumors and everything else. Really? And they can get all kinds of compensation. Everybody's getting compensation for everything, including people who get new knees and stuff. Somehow, one of the apparatus that actually goes into the knee is giving people viruses, and they have to have it taken out, cleaned out, and they're getting compensated for it. What's going on? Is this in preparation for the dichotomous society that they talked about in the book, The World is Flat? Think about it, guys. Choose your poison. Maybe it'll be fantastic. Everyone will be equal, okay? Which is interesting too, because if he puts together a whole new way of America, a whole new sort of constitution where everybody's equal, everybody's starting on the same plane, really? What about all the people who had all the atrocities done to them? Forget them. What about these people coming into the country? They might get kicked out in the next 8 weeks. 12 weeks, if the Donald gets in. And I'll tell you, when he was in, that was a nice 4 years. I'll be honest with you. People, it was kind of an easy 4 years. You're going to think I'm crazy to say that. But what was so interesting was everyone wanted to be considered an American. You had the good old boys, you had the homeboys, you had everybody vying for a spot in America because people were feeling like they were being pushed out. Okay. People got their $1,400 compensation, whatever that was, for hard, I don't know, too many people have gotten that since Biden's been in, but I don't know, So let me jump from Trump to Kamala. Let me jump to Kamala. Now, what's interesting about Kamala is that she's had a pretty good run. She hasn't had too many questions. She hasn't had to even present her agenda or her idea for what America should be doing in the future. She doesn't have to do any of that. Like none. That's interesting. Now, I saw Judge Joe Brown talking with, what's that young black woman's name? She's fat. Candace. Talking with Candace. And it was very interesting. He said that Kamala ran unopposed by any Republican, and that's how she got into the Senate. And of course, with, what was his name? Brown, I think the mayor of LA, who was her boyfriend at the time. They made sure that she became the prosecutor for the state. Some people are just chosen. So she ran unopposed and got into Senate. And she's now running for president, and she didn't even have to give us an agenda. She hasn't even had to answer any questions. Like, there are people saying, what are you going to do for the middle class? What are you going to do for people? And the prices of food going up so high, what are you going to do? Here in New York right now, we have a very bad situation when it comes to water. We're out of water. We can only take a shower that's 1 minute long. People going to be funky. But anyway, so when she's asked these questions, she doesn't exactly give an answer. And what I do see her do is dog out Trump. He's easily dog out worthy. I mean, he's easy to dog out. But she can dog him out. But tell us, what are you going to do? She says, move forward. We just are going to keep going forward. So that means that all of Biden's initiatives are going to be hers. So whatever Biden's doing right now, I'm sure you're really happy with that, she will continue to do. I guess that's what move forward means, because we haven't heard anything else. We really haven't. Now, what I really think is going to happen is this, and this is the choice you have to think about and make. It is 2024, 2025. It is not 1980. It's not 1970. It's 2025. And we're dealing with a whole other spectrum of ball game. Completely different than we've ever dealt with before. And I think a lot of you are feeling it. Spiritually, politically, economically. It's tough. It's tough out there right now. It's really tough. And people in America are what? Looking for answers. We're looking for answers. Answers. What are we going to do? This is what I think is going to happen. And you got to stick with me for a minute. We got to go back to Obama, who probably is the one really running the office of the president. I really do think that Kamala is merely a cover for Obama. I really do. And if you're happy under Obama, great. Vote for her, because I think he's going to have a tremendous influence on her and on the office of the presidency. But let's just visit that for a minute. Again, you all know I have a huge problem with what happened in June of 2013 when the case came, Shelby versus Eric Holder being the Attorney General of the United States. What happened? Well, let me just go way back, and I've said this before on the last one. On the last one I spoke on, that everybody's like, what do you mean? What's so interesting is so many things were overlooked when Obama was in the presidency. Obama's main objective was to make sure that you had same-sex marriage and you had rights for same-sex people who want to be together, for people who want their sex to be changed. I mean, that was his agenda, and that's what he did, and he did it well. Now, when it came to things that happened in the 60s, And how ironic, so many of those very powerful leaders died when Obama happened to be in office. Martin Luther King's wife, amazing. These people who marched and fought for our right to vote. Anyway, okay. So with the Shelby case, what happened after the 60s was, if there was some unfair voting practice, you could go directly to the Attorney General of the United States and get stuff done. But in the Shelby case coming out of North Carolina, the conclusion was that there's no need to go straight to the Attorney General anymore. We now live in a race-neutral society. We have a black president. So people were scratching their heads from 2014 on saying, why are people marching for rights? What? To vote? Why? And then something that's even more interesting, and I'm sure that when people heard this on TV, they were like, what are they talking about? Where they have this rule that you can't eat in line if the lines are long. Well, the Shelby case, decided in June of 2013, allowed states, especially those southern states and others, it affected Brooklyn and the Bronx and Manhattan also, okay? Districts could be redrawn. And if it seemed like the white vote wasn't getting in, you could redraw it so that the white vote can get in. Okay, very important. And I don't think that the votes are white or black, to be honest with you. That's a fallacy. Like when people say the black lower class and the white middle class, like there's no black middle class, there's no black upper class. I mean, what, choose your poison. That's what this is called. Choose your poison. Okay, choose your poison. All right. So here, the Obama administration lost the right to vote, and now we're back at ground zero with that, with voting. We're at ground zero. So what is Kamala going to do about that? You already know what Trump is going to do about that. Trump's creating a whole new country, probably the North American alliance between Mexico, America, and Canada. North American alliance. Why not? Okay, why not? You see how angry the people are who want to vote for him, because they think that people of color just get away with everything. We just get like degrees thrown at us. If we speak well, we just learned how to conjugate the verb form to be the day before, that sort of thing. But I find that liberal Democrats are the exact same way. So now let's think about this. What a move in June of 2013. What a racist move. To number one say, okay, if there's a problem with voting, you no longer we no longer are going to pay attention to racial issues or anything like that might crush, somehow hold down the vote of those people of color, etc. So because we have a race neutral society. So since Obama's administration came up with that, and then a couple of years later, using the case of Loving versus Virginia, which really was a case that had to do with procreation between blacks and whites, but use that to give rights for same-sex marriage, Kamala says, let's move forward. So I guess we're just going to keep moving forward. So if we move forward, this is my question, because there is something that makes us move backwards. And let me finish that other thought. If you heard of a case coming up where people can't eat in line because lines are long, well, that's a direct result of the Shelby case, okay? What happened was, once all those things were redrawn, then people had to go way far out to vote. And there are long lines. You've got older people, especially old black folk, old Latinos, old folk who got to get their chicken in the line, and they're not even allowed to eat their chicken in the line. How interesting. Now, if that had been a Republican outcome, all hell would be breaking loose. but it was a Democratic outcome with a black president and a black attorney general. Nobody said anything. Wow. Choose your poison. Choose your poison. Before Obama's administration left, the UN told Loretta Lynch, the attorney general who took Eric Holder's place, told Loretta Lynch, listen, you guys can't leave until policing guidelines are in line with global police practices. That went right over everybody's head, right by the ear. Nobody heard it. And that's what they had to do. What does that mean? Globalization. I believe while Trump is going to, create this North American alliance, Kamala is going to get in line with the one world order. And no, America's not going to be number one. Do you remember about a year or two ago, Biden, we want to be number one. We should be number one. We want to be number one. Why was he saying that? He was just playing a game. Yep, I said that. Sorry, I didn't mean to say that. He knew that the people listening to that didn't understand what he was talking about. But as soon as Kamala is able to line us up globally, America's not going to be number one. No way. What do we have? What do we have? We're a country that's dependent on everybody else. We use 95% of everybody else's resources. So what are we going to do? We're not going to be number one. You doing that. So, we're not going to be number one doing that. We aren't going to be able to eat chicken in line, And of course, we aren't the only people in this country. Understand, this is supposed to be a melting pot. I think that's the idea behind what Trump wants to do, and really wants to make this one, almost conglomerate. Really, I think he just wants. America's a corporation anyway. You guys know that? Do you know that? It's something we talk about another time. Maritime law, the whole thing. It's really interesting. But getting back to this election. Let's think. Oh, and there's one other thing, Kamala. Somebody's like, oh, yeah, Joe Brown's talking to Candace. He's like, yeah, and she was Indian when she was in California. And then, this one made $37 billion selling this because of what she did. All the stuff he was talking about. But let's talk about that Indian thing. Her father's West Indian. Her mother's East Indian via the West Indies. Do they refer to themselves as Indian? Probably. One of my cats is acting up. This is my Maine Coon. Well, she's part Maine Coon. She's a big girl. Big girl. But she's still not totally grown, but she likes to bother me. But anyway, and there's my dog back there. Anyway. So, she called herself Indian. Well, I know a lot of people from the Caribbean. My family is Caribbean. Okay, on both sides. My mother's father's from Barbados, and my father's people are from Jamaica and Colombia, via East Africa and a little bit of West Africa. So that's why we have a very interesting look in my family. But anyway, let's move on. You can always tell who exactly my family is based upon this look. We all kind of have the same look, and it's a look that is more Eastern African than Western African, but who cares? Who cares? Okay. Anyway, so her dad was asked once, well, what are you? And he said, well, I'm Irish and I'm this and I'm that. That's a West Indian thing. It really is. Okay. I mean, my last name is Brockett. I had a whole Ashkenaz family come after me and use their little pickaninnies from below the Mason-Dixon line, because they found out that my last name Brockett is an internationally royal name. Who started my line? Lord William Brockett with one T. They were made lords by, I think, Queen Victoria. Well, why do I identify with that more? He bought my great-great-great-great-grandmother, fell in love with her, had kids with her. When they left the Caribbean, they left the land to my extended family. When my great-great-grandfather came here in the 1870s from Jamaica, he was born in 1857. Slavery ended in Jamaica in 1833. 92% of the people, by the way, who ended up being enslaved in Jamaica were sold by the Ghanaians. Ghana. So when you go to Ghana and you see those big castles, those are the slave castles. You ask a Ghanaian, oh, what is that? Oh, I don't know. I don't know what it is. They know what it is. That's where they sold us. And I'm thankful for that, because what's even more interesting is my family was coming from East Africa, original Hebrews. But we'll leave that alone. As I said, an Ashkenaz family came after me because they found out that my line wasn't enslaved, and it made them angry. And they used their pickaninnies to come after me. And they are liberals. So as I said, choose your poison. Choose your poison. With Trump, he wants to rewrite America. No more elections. Okay? Appointments based upon something. What, I don't know. That's what he wants. And he wants everybody to start off on a level playing field. Okay. Kamala wants to continue with the Biden era promises, the Biden era thought process, economically, socially, and globally. And I'll tell you, she's got a little star over her. Because when you can run unopposed for the Senate and you're a Democrat coming out of California and you get it, whoa. When you can be nominated, when you can not be nominated for president, but be placed in the presidency, possibly being president, she didn't have to campaign. She didn't have to be nominated. She didn't have to do any of that stuff. Slip right in. So what does it mean? Usually people that slip right in do whatever they're told. And the other ones who want to tear everything gets toe up from the flow up. Pick your poison.